Medieval knights weren't just symbols of honor and courage. They were living war machines, clad in up to 65 pounds of steel armor, yet still able to ride horses, fight in brutal combat, and survive the chaos of the battlefield. How could an ordinary human carry what amounts to a walking wall of metal and still move with speed, agility, and even dominance? Were they superhuman? Or have we misunderstood what that armor really meant? The truth has been distorted by movies and myths for far too long. Armor didn't slow knights down, it kept them alive. These weren't sluggish tin cans lumbering across fields. They were elite warriors, forged through relentless training and equipped with the most advanced protective technology of their time. Once you understand how the armor was engineered, how knights were trained, and how they turned every pound of steel into a tactical advantage rather than a burden, you'll see nothing feels heavy when it's been mastered. Let's dive into the truth behind the shining metal, where engineering, strength, and strategy came together to create real-life warriors of steel. Sure, here's part 1 written in American English, keeping the tone clear, engaging, and informative, while flowing naturally from the introduction. Part 1. The truth about armor. Was it really that heavy? When people think of knights, they often imagine clunky metal suits so heavy that the person inside could barely move. Hollywood loves to show armored warriors collapsing under their own weight, needing cranes to mount horses or struggling to stand after falling. But that's not just wrong, it's way off. In reality, a full suit of plate armor worn by a late medieval knight weighed about 50 to 65 pounds, roughly 23 to 30 kilograms. That's heavy, sure, but not unmanageable. More importantly, it was carefully engineered to distribute that weight evenly across the body. Instead of resting all on the shoulders like a modern backpack, the weight was spread out over the hips, legs, and torso, which made movement surprisingly efficient. Here's a comparison that might surprise you. Today's modern soldiers often carry 60 to 80 pounds of gear during combat missions, sometimes even more. Yet we don't think of them as immobile or sluggish. Knights were no different. They trained for years to fight in their armor, and they moved in it like it was a second skin. Modern reenactors and historians have tested these suits and found that, while they do limit stamina over time, they don't restrict normal movement nearly as much as people assume. Knights could run, jump, roll, mount horses without help, and fight for extended periods, all while fully armored. So no, knights weren't dragging themselves across the battlefield. They were charging, dodging, striking, and surviving. The armor wasn't a burden, it was their edge. Contrary to what many assume, plate armor didn't function like a rigid metal cage. It was a masterclass in medieval engineering, made up of overlapping steel plates connected with leather straps, hinges, and rivets. Each piece, cuirass, greaves, gauntlets, pauldrons, was designed to move with the body, not against it. The joints were flexible, allowing knights to bend their elbows, twist at the waist, and pivot their knees with surprising freedom. Think of it less like being locked in a box and more like wearing a high-tech exoskeleton, crafted by blacksmiths who understood both anatomy and combat. Historical records and surviving training manuals, like the 15th century Fechtbücher or fight books, show that knights trained in running, wrestling, swordplay, and even ground combat in full armor. They weren't just capable of walking, they were expected to climb, grapple, sprint short distances, and fight in fast-paced melees. Falling down wasn't a death sentence, either. A properly trained knight could fall in full armor and stand up on their own within seconds. Even more fascinating, armor was tailored to its wearer, measured and fitted with the precision of a modern-day suit. That meant no two suits were exactly alike, and each one balanced protection with mobility based on the knight's fighting style, wealth, and role in battle. So why does the myth of the clumsy, immobile knight still persist? Mostly because of Victorian-era museum displays, which often showed armor out of context, too large, incorrectly assembled, or designed for ceremonial use, not war. Add in centuries of dramatized films and fantasy games, and the image stuck. But the reality is far more impressive. Medieval armor wasn't a flaw in design, it was a triumph. Knights weren't fighting despite their armor. They were fighting because of it. This also helps explain why knights weren't constantly exhausted while fighting. While the armor was heavy by modern fashion standards, it wasn't a constant drain on energy, since the weight was distributed and stabilized. Much like how a hiker wears a well-fitted backpack with a hip belt, knights could maintain stamina and balance in ways we might not expect. Of course, wearing armor did come with trade-offs. It could get hot. It required conditioning. And after extended periods of combat or marching, fatigue would eventually set in. But knights trained for this. Their bodies adapted to the armor, and their combat styles evolved with it. Every movement was deliberate. Every part of the suit had a purpose. To truly understand the genius of plate armor, you have to think of it not as a burden, but as a battle-ready system, a fusion of man and metal designed to survive the most brutal combat of the age. The real surprise isn't that knights could fight in 65 pounds of steel. It's that they could do so with speed, precision, and deadly efficiency. So the next time you see a knight in a movie struggling to move, remember this. It's not the armor that failed them. It's the story that did. Part 2. Built for battle. How armor became a second skin. Imagine this. You're standing in a muddy field somewhere in 15th century Europe. All around you, the air is thick with smoke and sweat. You hear the distant thunder of hoofs. And then, emerging from the haze, you see them. Armored knights, glinting in the dim light, moving with purpose. Not slow, not clumsy, but fluid, trained, and terrifyingly efficient. How can someone wrapped in 65 pounds of steel move like that? The answer lies in a forgotten truth. Plate armor wasn't a prison. It was a perfectly engineered second skin, made not to restrict movement, but to channel it. The craft of moving metal. Armor was never just metal bolted onto a body. It was a system, an extension of the knight himself. Every joint had a purpose. At the elbows and knees, overlapping plates called lames moved like scales, flexing smoothly with every step. Every swing of a sword. The shoulders weren't locked. They pivoted thanks to floating rivets. Even the gauntlets had articulated fingers, each one layered like a suit of mechanical skin, so a knight could draw a blade, grip a lance, or even write. These weren't walking coffins. They were mobile command centers built for war. Not just steel, an ecosystem of armor. Before a single plate was strapped on, the knight would dress in layers. First came the gambeson, a padded linen jacket stuffed with wool or horsehair. It cushioned blows and kept the metal from biting into the skin. Over that came the arming doublet, fitted with leather ties to secure each plate precisely where it belonged. Then came the steel itself, carefully arranged, weighted, and balanced. You might think it would feel like being buried in metal. But the armorers had a secret. They spread the weight, not stack it, instead of dragging on the shoulders. The load was pushed down through the hips and into the legs. It's the same principle used by modern backpackers, and it worked. The result? A suit that didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a shell. Not just for defense, made for the fight. The armor wasn't just protection. It was strategy. Its curved surfaces deflected arrows and sword strikes, sending them sliding harmlessly away. Helmets were sculpted with angled visors to guide points away from the eyes and mouth. Even when an enemy managed to land a clean hit, the armor turned sharp force into blunt impact, enough to bruise. Yes, but not kill. And then there were the gaps, the tiny spaces at the joints or under the arms. They were small, well guarded, and knights knew how to fight around them. They developed techniques like half-swording, where they'd grip the middle of their own blade to aim precise thrust into weak spots. Or mordhaw, striking with the hilt like a hammer. This was no flailing brawl. It was chess and steel. Modern proof. The myth of the clumsy knight destroyed. Today, historians, martial artists, and reenactors have tested the myths. They've put on replica suits, faithful down to the rivets, and put them through hell. The results? Stunning. They ran, climbed stairs, jumped hurdles, and even did somersaults in full armor. They proved a knight could stand up on his own after being knocked down, usually in less than 3 seconds. And in combat tests, they showed that most swords and axes couldn't penetrate properly fitted plate armor at all. Even the Metropolitan Museum of Art filmed a demonstration where an armored fighter jogged, ducked, and sparred with grace. It wasn't like the movies. It was better. The danger of museum myths. So where did we get the idea that knights were stiff and helpless? Blame the museums. Many of the suits you see on display weren't built for war. Some were parade armor, made to impress, not protect, often heavier and flashier than the real thing. Others were tournament armor, built for justs and heavily reinforced to survive a charging horse, not made for battlefield mobility. And to make matters worse, museums often displayed the suits on oversized mannequins, creating the illusion that knights were enormous, immobile giants. It's no wonder the myth stuck. But it's just that, a myth. A battlefield mindset. The real armor was more than metal. It was psychology. Imagine charging into a hailstorm of arrows, knowing your chest is shielded by tempered steel. Imagine grappling with a foe and not worrying if his blade slices your arm. Armor gave knights confidence, not just protection. And confidence can win battles. Knights used their armor to push the fight forward, to intimidate, to withstand hits and outlast opponents. While others dodged or feared the blade, the knight moved through it, relentless, armored, and alive. Armor wasn't a burden. It was the edge. So the next time you see a knight in a movie struggling to lift his arms, remember this. Real knights weren't trapped in metal. They were transformed by it. Their armor didn't weigh them down, it elevated them. It didn't limit movement, it unlocked power. It didn't slow them, it let them survive. And when they marched into battle, they weren't dragging steel. They were wearing a legacy. The armor wore you back. Let's step even closer. You're a knight. You've just been strapped into your full harness. There's a brief silence as your squire tightens the last buckle, checks the straps along your hips, adjusts the chin of your helmet. You draw your first breath inside the steel. It's not what you expected. It's not claustrophobic. It's focused. The world outside narrows to a slit in your visor, but every sound echoes with clarity. You can hear the rustle of mail, the creak of leather under steel. Your body feels compressed, but also invincible, like you're carrying your own fortress. You stretch your arm. The elbow bends freely. You shift your stance. The weight follows you, not against you. And then you walk. The first step, moving like a knight. There's a rhythm to it, an unexpected grace. With each step, the plates move with you. Your stride is shorter than usual, sure, but deliberate. The weight isn't on your arms or your back. It's sitting where it should, your hips, your thighs, your core. You don't wobble. You don't teeter. Then you test more. A turn, a crouch, a feint with the sword. It works, because every inch of your armor has been measured, hammered, and shaped by someone who knew exactly how you'd move. Not in a hallway, but in a chaotic, muddy, life-or-death battlefield. These suits weren't built in theory. They were built by people who had watched knights fall, bleed, and win. Inside the helm, not just protection, but perception. Now you lower the visor. The helmet closes with a metallic click. The world darkens, but it's not blind. The eye slits are narrow by design, small enough to shield you from an arrowhead, but wide enough to read a sword swing. The interior is padded. Your head doesn't rattle in a tin can. It rests inside a thick, snug layer of cloth and leather. The helmet turns with your neck, not after it. You hear your own breath bounce back to you louder than life. And somehow, it makes you sharper, focused, ready. Battlefield reality designed to withstand the storm. Let's not sugarcoat it. Combat in armor was brutal, fast, ugly, but the armor held up. You might take a mace to the chest and stumble, sure, but your ribs don't shatter. You could fall on your back and still rise, even on uneven ground. You might be tackled by an enemy and end up wrestling in the mud, fighting not with flourish but desperation. And still, your armor turns glancing blows into bruises. It buys you seconds. And seconds on the battlefield can mean survival. Knights trained for this, not to be flashy, but to stay standing when everyone else fell. Armor in context, not just for the elite. Here's something else people forget. Armor evolved across class and region. Not every man in steel was a noble on a charger. By the late 14th and 15th centuries, even professional foot soldiers, men-at-arms, wore partial plate or brigandine jackets with steel inserts. The full suit of armor wasn't some rare artifact. It was becoming the standard of serious warfare. And while full plate was expensive, it wasn't always made of gold and scrollwork. Many suits were simple, workmanlike tools of war, matte blackened steel, riveted clean, no flair, just function. In short, armor wasn't just a display of wealth. It was a necessity. Built for men who expected to be hit and intended to hit back. Why the myth survived, and why it still needs breaking. So why do we still believe knights couldn't move? Why the endless jokes about falling over and not getting up? It's because, for centuries, we weren't looking at armor as a living thing. We were looking at it without the knight inside. Think about it. Museum armor is shown standing still. It's lifeless, mounted, arms rigid. Often, it's parade armor or tournament gear, made for ceremony or horseback justs, not the battlefield. These suits are heavier, often more ornamental, and definitely not built for combat mobility. Add in Victorian Romanticism, Renaissance fair costumes, and Hollywood's dramatic, but historically lazy, depictions of clunky metal men, and the image stuck. The truth? It's been under our noses all along. We just needed to put it back on a human body and let it move. Armor as technology, not primitive, but advanced. Here's the biggest mythbuster of all. Medieval armor wasn't primitive. It was cutting edge, a culmination of metallurgy, craftsmanship, biomechanics, and battlefield experience. Some armorers spent decades perfecting techniques for shaping steel into curved, resilient forms. Some armor took months to complete, measured to the knight's build, adjusted for the weight of his weapons, even balanced for his dominant hand. In many ways, a suit of armor was closer to a modern-day exoskeleton than a costume. It worked with the body. It predicted stress points. It allowed full use of arms, knees, ankles, even the neck. People often gasp when they see reenactors running in full armor. But to the people who lived it, that wasn't impressive. That was expected. Wearing armor wasn't a handicap. It was an advantage. A knight didn't train to overcome his armor. He trained to master it, to use it, to own it. He learned how to roll with blows, how to fall without breaking, how to attack with the confidence of someone who knew most blades would glance off. He learned to fight differently, with tight motions, grapples, thrusts, close combat, controlled fury. Wearing armor wasn't a disadvantage. It was an edge. It let you step into danger with fewer fears and more options. And in a world where a single mistake could be fatal, every layer of steel bought you one more chance to live. Closing this chapter, the truth beneath the steel. So what did it mean to wear armor? It meant carrying 65 pounds of forged willpower, tailored to your shape, tested in battle, and trusted with your life. It meant entering the fight not just as a man, but as something more, something armored, trained, sharpened in mind and metal. Not a prisoner of your own protection, but a warrior who moved through chaos like a storm in steel. Part 3. Forged in Fire. How knights trained to move and fight in armor. Imagine waking up before dawn. The chill of the morning air bites at your skin, but you don't hesitate. Today is another day to become stronger, faster, better. You have a mission, not just to survive, but to conquer. Because wearing armor isn't just about putting on steel, it's about becoming steel. The knight's morning. Strength begins long before the battle. A knight's day wasn't all glamour and glory. It started with grueling physical training. Long before the heavy plates were strapped on, knights trained their bodies relentlessly. They ran through fields, lifted heavy logs, wrestled, and practiced with wooden swords. Their muscles weren't just strong, they were conditioned to endure hours of combat without fatigue. Strength was essential, not just brute force, but functional strength, the kind that lets you swing a sword with deadly speed, hold a heavy shield for minutes, and sprint short distances in full armor. Endurance for war. Building a body that doesn't quit. Endurance was king. Wearing armor meant carrying extra weight, up to 30 kilograms or more, but knights had to move quickly and keep their focus sharp. Daily routines included long marches, sometimes over rough terrain, sometimes carrying gear heavier than their own armor. This wasn't training for a sprint, it was training for a marathon. Building stamina to last through the chaos of battle. Knights also practiced breathing techniques to stay calm and control their oxygen use. Crucial when fighting inside the confining helmet and armor. Mastering movement, the art of fighting in armor. Movement in armor was an art form. Knights didn't just throw wild punches. They mastered precision strikes, grappling techniques, and tactical footwork. Training halls echoed with the clash of wooden swords and the thud of padded strikes as squires and knights honed their skills. They learned to exploit gaps in enemy armor with precise thrusts. Use half-swording to control the blade in close combat. Employ wrestling holds and throws to incapacitate armored foes. Maneuver on horseback with agility. Balancing both rider and mount as a unit. Every movement was practiced again and again until it became second nature. So when steel met steel, the knight was always one step ahead. Mental fortitude. More than muscle. Training wasn't only physical. A knight's mind had to be as sharp as his blade. Enduring long campaigns, facing death daily, required courage and unwavering focus. Knights practiced mental discipline, meditation, and sometimes religious devotion to steel their nerves. Fear was real, but they learned to channel it into determination. The armor was a shield not just for the body, but for the mind. The role of the squire, apprenticeship in steel. No knight trained alone. A squire was more than a servant, he was a lifelong student. Training under a knight's watchful eye. Squiring involved. Learning to don and doff armor quickly and correctly. Practicing combat drills with wooden weapons and blunt steel. Maintaining weapons and armor. Understanding their design intimately. Training in horsemanship and battlefield tactics. This apprenticeship could last for years. Shaping raw youths into formidable warriors ready to wear the armor of a knight. The result, warriors made to endure. All this training transformed knights into something extraordinary. They weren't just men in heavy suits, they were living weapons forged through sweat, pain, and relentless practice. Their bodies were conditioned to make the impossible possible, fighting, charging, and surviving in armor that might weigh as much as a small child. And that's how they won battles, carved out empires, and became legends. The warrior's discipline, strengthening body and mind. The day's hard labor and training didn't stop at physical drills. Behind every strike and parry was hours of dedication to mental toughness and battlefield savvy, sharpening the mind. The knight's mental arsenal. Imagine standing on a battlefield surrounded by chaos, the clash of swords, the roar of horses, and the screams of men. In this storm, panic could kill as surely as an arrow. Knights trained to keep calm, to focus. Meditation wasn't meditation as we think of it today, but a steadying of the breath and mind. Some knights recited prayers, calling on divine protection, while others visualized battle movements or rehearsed tactics mentally. They learned to control adrenaline, to think clearly under pressure, and to make split-second decisions that could mean life or death. Repetition, the mother of mastery. Repetition was the heart of training. Knights drilled their strikes, blocks, and maneuvers tirelessly. Sparring wasn't about showmanship, it was preparation. Every move had to be second nature, flawless even under exhaustion or pain. Training with weighted weapons or extra armor helped build strength and speed. When the real armor was worn in battle, the knight felt lighter and moved faster, having pushed beyond ordinary limits during practice. Conditioning the body for battle fatigue. Fatigue was a knight's greatest enemy. Imagine fighting for hours, wearing heavy armor, wielding heavy weapons, all while the sun beats down or rain soaks through your layers. To combat this, knights built incredible endurance. Training included running up hills, swimming, and carrying heavy loads. They conditioned their hearts and lungs to keep pumping despite the weight and stress. Nutrition and rest were also essential. While the stereotype is that knights feasted endlessly, many followed strict diets designed to fuel their bodies for stamina and recovery. Training the senses, sight, sound, and touch. Armor limited some senses, but knights learned to compensate. They trained their hearing to detect enemy movements through muffled sounds, their sight to catch the smallest motion through narrow visor slits, and their touch to sense shifts in weight and balance. This sensory training allowed knights to react faster, anticipate attacks, and move fluidly even when visibility was limited. The brotherhood of combat. Training wasn't done alone. Knights sparred with fellow warriors, learning not just their own skills, but how to read an opponent's tells and strategies. Combat schools, known as Fechschulen, taught swordsmanship, grappling, and armored combat techniques, passing down knowledge from master to student. This camaraderie and rivalry pushed knights to refine their craft, preparing them to face real enemies on the battlefield. Adaptability. Evolving with the armor. As armor evolved, so did fighting styles. Knights adapted their training to new weapon designs, shifting from heavy maces and axes to swords and polearms optimized to exploit armor weaknesses. They learned new techniques for mounted combat and dismounted fighting, mastering both with equal skill. The ability to adapt quickly, physically, and mentally was as vital as strength or endurance. From training ground to battlefield, all this training culminated in the moment of truth, when a knight stepped into his armor and mounted his horse. He carried not only steel, but years of preparation. Each muscle remembered drills. Each breath was steady. Each strike calculated. He was ready to face the chaos, knowing his armor was an extension of his will and training. Part 4. Weapons and Tactics. How armor shaped the knight's arsenal and battle strategy. Imagine a battlefield strewn with the clang of steel, the thundering charge of horses, and warriors locked in brutal combat. At the center of this chaos stands the knight, armored head to toe, wielding weapons designed to cut through or bypass the toughest defenses. But these weapons weren't chosen at random. They were the result of centuries of evolution, trial, and battlefield necessity, all shaped by the armor itself. The sword. More than just a cutting tool. When most people think of knights, they picture the iconic longsword. But the sword wasn't just a weapon. It was an extension of the knight's body and training. Knights didn't rely on heavy hacking or slashing alone. Plate armor made cutting less effective because blows often glanced off the curved surfaces. Instead, knights used thrusting attacks, precise, targeted strikes aimed at the tiny gaps in armor, under the arms, behind the knees, the visor slits. The technique, known as half-swording, became crucial. This involved gripping the middle of the blade with one hand, allowing the knight to wield the sword like a short spear, delivering deadly, controlled thrusts into weak spots. It was a skill that required both strength and finesse. Polearms. Power and reach against the armored foe. Polearms like the halberd, poleaxe, and guisarme were the knight's answer to heavily armored enemies. These weapons combined the reach of a spear with chopping or hammering power. The halberd, for example, had an axe blade to cleave, a spike to thrust, and a hook to pull mounted opponents off their horses. Polearms excelled at delivering blunt force trauma capable of stunning or injuring knights even through their armor. A well-placed strike could dent plates, fracture bones beneath, or knock a knight off balance. Maces and war hammers, crushing through steel, where swords and axes struggled to penetrate plate armor. Maces and war hammers thrived. Unlike edged weapons, these blunt instruments focused on force. A mace's heavy head could crush armor, transmitting the impact to the body beneath without needing to cut through metal. Warhammers often featured a hammer face on one side and a spike on the other, perfect for puncturing gaps or denting plates. These weapons made up for the limitations swords faced in the age of full plate. Shields, from large barriers to tactical tools. Early knights wielded large shields, but as plate armor improved, shields evolved. By the late Middle Ages, many knights favored smaller shields or even abandoned them altogether, relying on their armor for defense. Those who used shields carried bucklers small. Round shields used to parry blows and control an opponent's weapon. The buckler's light weight allowed greater mobility and faster reaction times, complementing the knight's armored agility. Mounted combat, the charge and its impact. Knights were renowned for their cavalry charges. Mounted on powerful war horses, they wielded lances designed to deliver devastating impact. The armor wasn't just for the knight. Horses wore protective barding too, sometimes nearly as heavy and articulated as their riders. The charge combined speed, weight, and momentum. A lance strike could shatter shields, break lines, and knock opponents to the ground. After the charge, knights switched to swords or polearms for close combat. Tactics shaped by armor. Armor changed how battles were fought. Skirmishes involved close formations of armored infantry and cavalry, relying on cohesion and discipline. Knights would work in groups, supporting each other's weaknesses, because armor reduced vulnerability to slashes. Knights focused on grappling and wrestling on the battlefield. Fights often became brutal tests of strength and technique at close quarters. Siege warfare also evolved, with armor helping knights survive dangerous assaults on walls and gates. The legacy of armor and arms. The relationship between armor and weapons was a constant arms race. As armor improved, so did weapons designed to counter it. This interplay drove innovation on both sides, pushing metallurgy, design, and battlefield tactics to new heights. Through it all, the knight remained a symbol of discipline, strength, and skill, a warrior whose weapons and armor together made him a force few could stand against. The dance of steel, mastering weapons and tactics with armor. The knight's arsenal was never static. It was a living, breathing system, constantly evolving in response to the battlefield's brutal realities. To understand the true mastery behind these warriors, we must look beyond the weapons themselves and into the tactics and strategies that turned armor and arms into a deadly symphony of war. Close quarters combat. When armor became a wrestling match, despite the sleek appearance of plate armor, many battles devolved into grueling, close quarters fights. The knight's sword might be blunted against the metal, but that wasn't the end of the fight. In tight melee, knights grappled, twisted, and wrestled. They used the edges of their armor as leverage and sought to unbalance opponents. Jabs with daggers hidden beneath the armor, known as misericords, targeted gaps in the plates, under the visor, behind the knees, or beneath the arms. Close combat required incredible strength and skill. It wasn't just about brute force, but knowing precisely where to strike, how to maneuver, and when to seize an opening. The role of foot soldiers and infantry in armor warfare. While knights dominated the cavalry, infantry were the backbone of medieval armies. Some infantrymen also wore partial plate or chainmail, carrying spears, axes, and crossbows. Their role was crucial, holding lines, protecting flanks, and engaging enemy foot soldiers and archers. Knights often coordinated with infantry, using their mobility and heavy armor to punch holes in enemy lines, then letting foot soldiers exploit the breach. This combined arms approach was a hallmark of medieval warfare strategy. The psychological edge of armor and arms. Armor didn't just protect the body, it projected power. The gleaming steel and imposing silhouette of a knight could intimidate foes before a single blow was struck. The sound of clanking armor, the thunder of hooves, and the sight of disciplined, well-armed warriors charging in masked enemy morale. This psychological advantage often gave knights a critical edge. Battles weren't won by steel alone, but by the fear and respect it commanded. Armor and weapon innovation. responding to new threats. As warfare evolved, so did threats. The rise of crossbows and later early firearms challenged the dominance of plate armor. Armorers responded by increasing plate thickness and altering designs to better deflect bolts and bullets. Similarly, weapons evolved. Polearms with spikes and hammerheads grew more versatile to exploit new vulnerabilities in armor. Knights and soldiers had to constantly adapt their tactics to survive and dominate. Training in weapon versatility. Knights didn't just master one weapon, they trained with many. A typical knight was skilled with the long sword, but also proficient in using polearms, daggers, and sometimes bows or crossbows. The ability to switch weapons depending on the situation was critical in battle. For instance, after a charge with a lance, a knight might drop it to wield a sword or poleaxe for close combat. If dismounted, he'd rely more heavily on grappling and dagger techniques. Armor as a tactical tool, not a burden. Armor influenced the entire rhythm of combat. It allowed knights to engage fearlessly, knowing their bodies were shielded from the worst strikes. It shaped their fighting style, slower, more deliberate, focused on precision and power rather than reckless swinging. Armor demanded tactical patience. Knights learned to control space, conserve energy, and strike decisively. They fought smart, using their protection as a base from which to dominate. The lasting impact, how armor and weapons shaped warfare. The legacy of knights, their armor and weapons extends beyond the Middle Ages. The interplay between protection and offense is a timeless story of innovation and adaptation in warfare. It set the stage for modern armor, combat tactics, and even the psychology of battle. Knights weren't just warriors in metal suits. They were pioneers of combat evolution, constantly balancing offense and defense, adapting to new threats, and mastering their tools with relentless discipline. Part 5. The Decline of the Knight. How gunpowder changed the game. For centuries, knights in gleaming armor were the undisputed rulers of the battlefield. Their mastery of weapons, armor, and tactics made them almost invincible in close combat. But as with all legends, change was inevitable. The rise of gunpowder weapons in the late Middle Ages and Renaissance began to reshape the face of war, and with it, the role of the knight. The gunpowder revolution. A new kind of threat. Imagine standing on a battlefield where the sharp clash of swords and the thunder of hooves are suddenly overshadowed by booming explosions and deadly projectiles piercing armor from hundreds of yards away. Gunpowder weapons like the arquebus and later the musketeer's musket introduced a terrifying new dynamic. These early firearms could punch through the thickest steel plates that once made knights nearly invulnerable. The old rules of engagement were shattered overnight. Armor versus bullets. The impossible battle. Knights and armorers scrambled to respond. Steel plates grew thicker and heavier in an attempt to resist bullets, but this came at a great cost. Mobility suffered, and the armor became even more exhausting to wear. Eventually, the weight and cost of effective bulletproof armor made it impractical on the battlefield. Many nobles and soldiers abandoned full-plate armor altogether, opting for lighter, more flexible protection or none at all. Changing tactics. The rise of infantry and firearms. With firearms changing the game, armies adapted. Massed infantry equipped with pikes and muskets became the new backbone of armies. These formations, supported by artillery, proved deadly against cavalry charges. Knights no longer charged into battle as the centerpiece of warfare. Instead, they fought alongside infantry or took on new roles as commanders, diplomats, or elite troops specialized in different forms of combat. The end of an era. From knight to cavalryman. The term knight gradually lost its battlefield meaning. Heavy cavalry transformed into lighter, more mobile units like dragoons and cuirassiers, who wore lighter armor and relied on firearms and sabers. The romantic image of the armored knight charging fearlessly into battle faded into legend and ceremony. Legacy beyond the battlefield. Though the age of the armored knight ended, their legacy endured. The ideals of chivalry, discipline, and martial skill shaped military traditions for centuries. The craftsmanship of armor and weapons influenced metallurgy and design far beyond their time. Even today, the knight's image symbolizes honor, courage, and mastery, a testament to an era when men wore steel like a second skin and fought as if their very lives depended on it. The knight's last stand, adaptation and transformation. As gunpowder spread across Europe, the battlefield was forever changed. The thunderous roar of cannons and muskets echoed over fields once dominated by clashing swords and charging horses. Yet, the decline of the knight was not immediate. It was a gradual, complex transformation. Armorers' final innovations, the quest for bulletproof steel. Determined to keep their advantage, armorers pushed metallurgy to its limits. Some suits of armor were crafted with overlapping plates thicker than ever before, designed to deflect or absorb the impact of early firearms. In some cases, knights commissioned special, proofed armor, tested by firing muskets at it from close range. While impressive, this armor was cumbersome and expensive, limiting its practicality to a small elite. The changing role of the knight on the battlefield. With full-plate armor increasingly obsolete, knights adapted their roles. Many became light cavalry, trading heavy armor for speed and mobility. These units specialized in reconnaissance, raiding, and quick strikes. Some knights took up firearms themselves, becoming early mounted gunmen or dragoons, blending old traditions with new technology. Others moved into command roles, leveraging their experience and status to lead infantry and coordinate complex battlefield maneuvers. This shift marked the birth of modern cavalry and the gradual professionalization of armies. Social and political shifts. The knight's place in society. The decline of battlefield dominance also reflected broader social changes. The rise of standing armies, centralized monarchies, and new military technologies diminished the political power of the feudal knight. Their traditional role as warrior nobles was supplanted by professional soldiers and mercenaries. However, knights retained their prestige as symbols of honor and nobility. Tournaments, pageantry, and chivalric orders preserved their cultural significance long after their military relevance faded. Gunpowder and the evolution of fortifications. Gunpowder not only challenged armor but also reshaped fortifications. Castles and city walls that once provided safe havens for knights became vulnerable to artillery bombardment. This forced changes in defensive architecture lower. Thicker walls with angled bastions designed to withstand cannon fire. Knights defending such fortifications had to adapt their siege tactics and strategies. The enduring legend of the knight. Though their military dominance waned, knights became larger-than-life figures in history and legend. Stories of chivalry, gallantry, and heroic battles were immortalized in literature and art, shaping how future generations imagined the medieval warrior. This mythic image often blurs the complex reality. Knights were skilled professionals who balanced strength, strategy, and adaptation in a brutal world. From medieval knight to modern symbol. Today, the knight's legacy lives on, not just in museums and reenactments, but in our collective imagination. The image of the armored knight charging into battle symbolizes courage, resilience, and the relentless human spirit. Though their armor has rusted and their weapons retired, the spirit forged in that steel continues to inspire. Part 6. The legacy of the knight, more than just armor and war. The tale of the knight is one of steel and sweat, of discipline and daring. It is a story stretching across centuries, where iron met flesh and courage met innovation. Though the heavy clang of armor has long since faded from battlefields, the legacy of the knight remains deeply etched in history, culture, and even our modern understanding of heroism. Beyond the armor, the spirit of the knight. The knight's armor was not merely a physical shield but a symbol of an ideal. It embodied virtues like honor, loyalty, courage, and discipline, qualities that transcended the battlefield. In a time when survival depended on strength and skill, knights also upheld a code of conduct known as chivalry, influencing notions of justice, fairness, and respect that ripple through centuries. This idealized spirit is what continues to captivate us today, the idea that strength must be balanced with honor and power with responsibility. Knights in culture and imagination. From medieval romances to modern movies and video games, knights live on as icons of heroism. Their stories inspire everything from epic fantasy tales to lessons in leadership and perseverance. The shining armor and gallant deeds remind us that, even in the darkest times, individuals can stand tall and fight for what they believe. The craftsmanship and innovation behind the armor. The development of knightly armor was a remarkable achievement of human ingenuity. Blacksmiths and armorers pushed the boundaries of metallurgy and design, creating suits that balanced protection, mobility, and comfort. Their innovations laid groundwork for later advances in protective gear, from soldiers' body armor to modern sports equipment. Studying these creations reveals a blend of art and science, revealing how technology and craftsmanship shaped history. Lessons from the knight's journey. The knight's story teaches us about adaptation and resilience. They thrived not because they were invincible, but because they trained relentlessly, mastered their tools, and embraced change when the battlefield demanded it. Their journey from dominating warriors to symbolic figures echoes challenges faced in many fields, reminding us that evolution is necessary and true strength often lies in the ability to transform. The human element. Courage under the weight of armor. Finally, it's crucial to remember the human behind the steel. A knight's armor might weigh 30 kilograms or more. Yet what truly made them formidable was their willpower, endurance, and relentless spirit. Carrying such weight into battle, day after day, they embodied a physical and mental toughness that commands respect. Their story is a tribute to the extraordinary capacity of humans to endure, innovate, and rise above adversity. Closing thoughts. The knight's armor, once a literal second skin, now serves as a metaphor for strength combined with purpose. Their journey from the fields of medieval battle to the pages of legend is a powerful reminder that history is shaped by those who wear their challenges with courage and forge their destiny with unwavering resolve. In the end, the story of the knight is more than just metal and warfare. It's a timeless testament to the human spirit, the human behind the armor, strength, sacrifice, and spirit. When we picture knights, it's easy to focus on the shining armor, the gleaming sword, and the grandeur of the battlefield. But beneath the metal plates was a human being, a warrior shaped by relentless training, immense sacrifice, and an unyielding spirit. Endurance beneath the weight. Carrying and fighting an armor weighing upwards of 30 kilograms was no small feat. The knight's body was a testament to physical conditioning and mental toughness. Imagine the grueling hours of training required just to move swiftly and effectively, the heat of summer baking the metal, the fatigue of battle pressing down. Every step taken in that armor was a triumph of willpower. Yet knights didn't just endure. They thrived under the challenge, turning what might have been a burden into a powerful advantage. Sacrifice for a cause. Knights often fought not only for personal glory, but for causes greater than themselves, loyalty to their lord, defense of their homeland, or adherence to a chivalric code. This sense of duty added a profound layer to their struggle. Their armor was a symbol of their commitment, a physical shield protecting their ideals as much as their bodies. In many ways, the knight's story is a story of sacrifice, sacrificing comfort, safety, and sometimes life itself, in pursuit of a higher purpose. Brotherhood and camaraderie. Battlefields forge bonds among knights. Shared hardship, mutual respect, and a code of honor created a unique brotherhood. This camaraderie was essential, not just for morale, but for survival. Knights relied on each other to cover weaknesses, to rally in the face of overwhelming odds, and to maintain order amid chaos. Their armor, While individual protection was also part of a collective defense, knights fighting as a unit, a shield wall of metal and muscle. The enduring inspiration of the knight's journey. Knights inspire us today not because of the metal they wore, but because of the spirit they embodied. They remind us that real strength comes from preparation, courage, and a willingness to face challenges head-on, even when weighed down by the burdens of life. Their journey encourages us to find resilience in adversity, to stand firm when others falter, and to wear our own armor of values and determination. The knight's legacy in modern life. In many ways, the knight's qualities resonate in modern heroes, athletes, soldiers, first responders, and anyone who faces danger or hardship with bravery and skill. We may no longer wear plate armor, but we all carry our own forms of protection and weapons, knowledge, discipline, empathy, and perseverance. The knight's legacy teaches us that with the right mindset, we can face any battle, whether on fields of war, in personal struggles, or in pursuit of our dreams. A final reflection. The story of knights and their armor is ultimately a human story of innovation and endurance, of honor and sacrifice, of adapting to change while holding fast to what matters most. As we look back across the centuries, the knight stands as a powerful symbol, a reminder that beneath every shield is a heart beating with courage. Beneath every suit of armor is a person ready to face the impossible. And in that truth lies the timeless inspiration of the knight. Part 7. A day in the life of a knight, behind the armor. Dawn breaks over the misty fields as the first light filters through the banners fluttering in the morning breeze. The knight stirs from a heart caught inside the castle's stone walls, the quiet hum of the waking camp echoing faintly around him. His journey begins not with battle, but with ritual, a disciplined routine that has shaped him from boyhood into the warrior he is today. Morning preparation, the ritual of armor. Before the clash of swords or the thunder of hoofs, the knight faces a personal trial, the donning of his armor. Each piece is carefully lifted, adjusted, and secured. The mail shirt slides over his torso, flexible yet tough, plate by plate. The heavy steel encases him, cuirass, gauntlets, greaves, until he is transformed, a moving fortress of metal. The weight presses down, but it also empowers. He moves with practiced grace, muscles conditioned to bear the burden. Every buckle fastened is a promise to himself, his lord, and the battlefield. Training and discipline. Sharpening mind and body. The morning is filled with rigorous training. Swordplay drills sharpen reflexes. Horsemanship lessons refine balance and control. Tactical briefings hone strategy and leadership. This is the crucible where skill meets endurance. The knight's sweat mingles with the dust of the training grounds. Each strike and parry a preparation for the unpredictable chaos of war. The brotherhood of arms. Between drills, the knight shares moments with his comrades. Stories are exchanged, advice given. Laughter shared despite the looming dangers. The camaraderie forged in these moments is vital. It's the steel that binds the group stronger than any armor. Together, they prepare not just to fight, but to survive and to protect each other in the face of death. Battle readiness, poised on the edge of war. As the sun climbs higher, the atmosphere shifts. The knight checks his weapons, a lance, a sword, a dagger, each carefully maintained, each a lifeline in the coming conflict. Mounted atop his warhorse, clad in armor that shines like a beacon, he surveys the battlefield ahead. The weight of responsibility settles on his shoulders. This is more than metal and muscle. It's courage under pressure, discipline in chaos. The moment of truth. And the world narrows to the clash of steel and the surge of adrenaline. Every move, every strike, is the culmination of years of training and the resolve to fight for honor, for comrades, for survival. Even as the armor weighs heavily, it becomes an extension of himself, a shield that carries him through the storm. Reflection and legacy. As dusk falls, the knight returns, bloodied but unbroken. The armor is removed, piece by piece, revealing the human beneath, the scars, the exhaustion, the unyielding spirit. In these moments, the knight's journey is clear. A testament to endurance, adaptation, and the indomitable will to face whatever battles come. Closing thought. The knight's life was a delicate balance of strength and vulnerability, discipline and passion, burden and bravery. Beneath the armor's cold surface lay a heart that beat with fierce determination. This glimpse into a day in the life of a knight brings us closer to understanding not just the legend, but the very real, very human story behind the metal. Beneath the steel, the heart and mind of a knight. As the flickering torchlight fades and the knight lies resting in the quiet solitude of his chamber. The armor is off, but the weight on his mind remains. The day's battles, victories, and losses play through his thoughts like a relentless tide. The burden of expectation, beyond physical strain. The knight carries an invisible weight, the expectations of family, lord, and kingdom. To fail is to risk dishonor, not just for himself, but for those he represents. He reflects on the lessons learned since boyhood. To be strong, yes, but also just. To be fierce, but measured. To fight with courage, but never recklessness. This delicate balance defines him as much as any piece of armor. Fear and resolve. Fear is no stranger to the knight. It whispers in the silence between battles, haunting the edges of his mind. But unlike the untrained, he does not surrender to it. Instead, fear sharpens his senses, steels his resolve, and deepens his understanding of what truly matters. Honor, comradeship, and the survival of those he fights for. The personal cost. The knight's life is one of sacrifice. He bears wounds visible and invisible, scars from battles, and the toll of loss. Separation from loved ones, and the constant shadow of death. Yet, in this sacrifice, he finds purpose. Each hardship endured is a testament to his commitment to something greater than himself. A moment of solitude and reflection. In rare quiet moments, the knight contemplates his place in the ever-changing world. He wonders what the future holds, not just for himself, but for the age of knights. Will the armor and sword one day be relics of the past? Will his sacrifices be remembered beyond stories and songs? These questions linger, unanswered, yet he meets them with the same steadfast courage that guides him in battle. The enduring human spirit. Ultimately, the knight's story is not only about metal and might, it is about the resilience of the human spirit. Underneath the weight of armor lies a heart that beats with hope, determination, and an unbreakable will. This is the true legacy of the knight, the timeless example of a person who faces life's challenges head-on, armored not just in steel, but in spirit. Part 8. The timeless symbol. How the knight's legacy lives on today. Centuries have passed since the clang of swords and the weight of plate armor dominated the battlefield. The era of knights in shining armor may be history, but their legacy continues to resonate deeply in modern culture, values, and imagination. Knights as symbols of honor and virtue. In a world vastly different from medieval battlefields, the figure of the knight remains a powerful symbol of honor, courage, loyalty, and chivalry. These ideals, forged in the crucible of warfare and society, transcend time and culture, whether in literature, film, or everyday language. The knight represents a commitment to standing up for what is right, protecting the vulnerable, and acting with integrity, values as relevant today as they were hundreds of years ago. The knight in popular culture. From epic fantasy novels to blockbuster movies and video games, knights continue to captivate our imagination. Characters clad in armor, wielding swords, and guided by codes of honor appear repeatedly as heroes who fight against darkness, injustice, and chaos. This cultural fascination reflects our deep-rooted admiration for bravery and the struggle to uphold virtue amid adversity. The influence on modern ethics and leadership. The medieval knight's code of chivalry has evolved into a metaphor for modern ethics and leadership principles. Qualities such as discipline, responsibility, courage under pressure, and respect for others inform not only military leadership but also business, sports, and personal development. In this way, the knight's legacy serves as a guiding light, inspiring people to lead with strength balanced by compassion. Preserving history, museums, reenactments, and scholarship around the world. Museums display intricately crafted suits of armor and weapons, preserving the craftsmanship and history of the knightly era. Historical reenactments and medieval festivals allow people to experience firsthand the skill, discipline, and culture of knights, bringing history alive. Scholars continue to study armor, battles, and chivalric codes to better understand the complex realities behind the myths. Metaphorical armor, lessons for today, in our fast-paced, often uncertain modern lives. The concept of armor takes on new meaning. We all build our own armor through education, values, resilience, and relationships to face challenges and protect what matters most. The knight's story reminds us that true protection is not just physical, but mental and emotional, and that courage and integrity are our strongest defenses. The knight's spirit in everyday heroes. Though few of us wear steel on the battlefield, many embody the knight's spirit in daily life. First responders rushing into danger, activists standing for justice, teachers shaping young minds, and countless others who face hardships with determination and honor continue this legacy. They remind us that heroism is not confined to history or legend, but is alive in every act of bravery and kindness. A legacy that transcends time. The knight's armor may have rusted, and the sword may rest in museums, but the essence of knighthood, courage, honor, sacrifice, and resilience remains vibrant. It lives in stories told around campfires, in the values passed down through generations, and in the hearts of those who choose to face life's battles with strength and integrity. The knight's legacy in modern identity and culture. The image of the knight, once a warrior clad in heavy armor, has evolved into a powerful metaphor woven into the fabric of modern identity. Across diverse cultures and generations, the ideals once upheld by knights continue to inspire, challenge, and shape who we aspire to be. The knight as a model of personal integrity. In an age where values can feel fluid and uncertain, the knight's unwavering code offers a model of personal integrity and honor. People look to the knight's example when navigating ethical dilemmas, striving to act with honesty, fairness, and respect even when circumstances tempt compromise. This aspiration fuels movements for social justice, leadership development, and community service, echoing the knight's historic mission to protect and serve. Chivalry and modern courtesy. Though the word chivalry often evokes images of courtly manners or romantic gestures, its deeper meaning, respect, kindness, and responsibility resonates profoundly today. Modern chivalry encourages us to treat others with dignity, to stand against injustice, and to take responsibility for the well-being of those around us. In workplaces, schools, and families, these values promote healthier, more compassionate relationships, modern armor against division and conflict. Knights in art, literature, and media, reimagining the hero. Artists, writers, filmmakers, and game designers continue to reimagine knights in ways that reflect contemporary concerns and hopes. From exploring themes of vulnerability beneath the armor, to challenging traditional gender roles, to portraying diverse heroes inspired by knighthood, creative works keep the legacy alive and relevant. These stories invite us to reflect on what it means to be brave, to fight for justice, and to carry our own armor in a complex world. Educational and inspirational programs. Schools and organizations around the globe use the story of the knight to teach important lessons. Programs focused on character education, leadership, and resilience draw on the knight's example to inspire young people to develop courage, responsibility, and empathy. Through these initiatives, the spirit of knighthood passes from history into the future, shaping the leaders of tomorrow. Knighthood today, orders and honors. Even today, The tradition of knighthood survives in ceremonial and honorary forms. Various countries maintain orders of knighthood, such as the Order of the British Empire or the French Legion of Honor, recognizing individuals who have demonstrated extraordinary service and dedication. These modern knights, while not donning armor, embody the enduring values of courage, service, and honor that defined their medieval predecessors. The global reach of the knight's legacy. What began as a European phenomenon has transcended borders, inspiring cultures worldwide. The universal themes of bravery, sacrifice, and justice resonate deeply in many societies, adapting the knight's spirit to local histories and traditions. This global embrace reflects the knight's role not just as a historical figure, but as a timeless symbol of humanity's highest aspirations. Looking forward, carrying the torch of knighthood. As the world faces new challenges, from global conflicts to social upheavals and environmental crises, the knight's legacy offers a beacon of hope. It calls on each of us to armor ourselves not just with weapons, but with knowledge, empathy, and resilience. By carrying forward the ideals of courage and honor, we can confront the battles of our own time with strength and purpose. Conclusion. The Eternal Knight, a legacy beyond time. The story of the knight is far more than a tale of armor, battles, and medieval glory. It is a timeless journey of the human spirit, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds, of honor upheld despite hardship, and of resilience beneath burdens both heavy and unseen. Knights once wore suits of steel weighing over 30 kilograms, yet it was their unwavering spirit and relentless discipline that truly made them formidable. Their armor protected their bodies, but their values, loyalty, courage, justice shielded their souls. Today, the clang of swords may be silent, and plate armor may rest in museums, but the essence of knighthood lives on. It echoes in every act of bravery, every choice to stand for what is right, and every effort to carry one's own burdens with dignity and strength. The knight's legacy challenges us all to face our battles, whether personal, social, or global, with honor, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to live with integrity, courage, and compassion. In a world that often feels uncertain and divided, the knight's story reminds us that true strength is born from values, discipline, and an unbreakable will to persevere. So whether in history books, legends, or the choices we make today, the knight remains a shining symbol of the best humanity can be. The armor may rust, but the spirit endures forever.